Well, as you can see, I've got the first part of the water table machined down. I took it down to 1 inch, 990 thousandths. The reason I stopped 10 thousandths short is because that'll give me some leeway to clean up the machine marks that are in the face and the water table, and it'll give me a little leeway for when I come to fit the monoblock to the water table and breech face. I'll have a little material to work with there. And it's not really a big deal since I'm not doing production work, since this is a one-off gun. There's not like there's going to be a factory line of replacement parts for it, so being off a few thousandths here or there, as long as each part fits to the next part, it doesn't really matter if it's exact. So on to the next step, which is to keep moving back and take that water table all the way back to the breech face and get the rest of that block machined out. At this point, I'm running at about 24 hours worth of time into this, and you can see I'm only about halfway into the block, and need to take off a few need to take off this much more on it here to get it to the breech face distance. So it's going to take a little while longer. So what I've done is cut as far as I can cut with that 3-inch end mill. The reason I can't go any deeper is because back here where my quill is, there's not enough clearance to get over the nuts of the clamps to go any farther down, being working this close to the clamping in it. Out here, of course, I could go all the way down to depth because I was clearing it this way, but I can't go any farther because of that. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to change to a smaller end mill and take the rest of this off with a smaller end mill. And as I said in the last video, when I get real close to where the shoulder will be back here, I'll stop short and I'll change again to a rounding end mill, to a ball end mill, so I can make a radiused corner back there. But so far we're into this about 26, 27 hours, something like that, and I've still got a long ways to go. Well, as you can see during the changeover here, I also added a couple clamps to the front of it. The reason I added these 2 clamps up here on the front of these blocks is because I'm taking all this metal off just this one side here, and since this piece of metal hasn't been stress relieved in any way, it's possible, as I take this clear back to there, that the front edge of this could raise up. It could warp up this way because all the stress is coming off of one side, and so in order to prevent that from happening, keeping everything nice and flat, I've clamped this front edge down just to make sure everything stays down tight to the table. Really nothing more to say about this other than I just got a whole lot more cutting to do, and now I'm doing it with a smaller bit. On a side note, the reason I mentioned earlier that I'd like to keep my machine room separate from my rest of my shop is because this is what happens when you take off this much metal in a few days' time. This is all pretty much just from that chunk of metal on the mill there. Imagine if that were scattered clear across my shop. And especially I don't want this stuff near my woodworking equipment, which is why my wood side of my shop is clear over in a separate part of the shop on the opposite side. So I'll press on, and when I get close to being done, you'll probably get a little more here. So you can see that the first pass has been made clear to depth here. You can see that it comes down nice and smooth. It just runs right down to the same depth. The way that's done is just with careful measuring and using good quality measuring tools and just bringing it right down to the right depth so that it's flush with the first set of cuts. Of course, it looks a little different because the size of the cutter's a little smaller, so it's cutting a different radius pattern than the big 3-inch. But that's the first section to take off. You can see, if I bring it down here, you can see I've got quite a ways to go yet. I've got this whole distance to take off here, and then of course that radius at the bottom eventually. So making progress, just takes time. So after many hours of cranking this thing back and forth and taking a little bit of metal off every time, you can see that all that's left is just the corner here. So I will change my end mill to a ball end mill and probably rearrange my clamps a little bit to give myself a little bit extra clearance, and I'll take that corner out, and then the breech face and water table should be ready to go, and I'll be able to move on to the next part. So as you can see, I've got the radius cut in finally, Got a nice single shot action and a nice double shot started here. Not too bad. You can see a little bit of machine marks that are going to have to be cleaned up in the face of this and in the water table. Overall, that's about a little over 40 hours worth of work to get to this point. What I'll be doing next, in the next update, is I'll be locating the spot where the underlever goes through, and then I'll drill it, step drill it up to a larger size enough to get my boring head in there, and then I'll bore it out to 1 inch diameter. And of course that'll stop short. On the opposite side it won't go quite all the way through because it leaves a bridge across the center. Out here it'll be a 1 inch hole, and then when I come back in after that and start cutting for the recesses where the lugs will drop down into, it'll end up being a bridge in there. And of course across the middle of the bridge it'll get drilled and tapped to hold the screw that goes through the underlever mechanism. So that'll be in the next update. Like I said, I'm running just a little over 40 hours on this so far, and look forward to telling you about the next part.